I go up across the ridge, and he's going up, and I'm like, man, this is a nice buck. And then all of a sudden, he crosses another buck track the same size, and the first 5 saplings in front of him all destroyed, just ripped right out of the ground. He was an angry deer. He was actually a bully. Like, you know, some deer have different characteristics. I'm a firm believer he was a bully. And he's side-hilling, and all of a sudden he just darts from there like 300 yards, finds 4 does, splits one off of them, off the group. The doe, he takes a doe, he pushes her hard up, beds down with her, and then he must have got sick and tired of waiting, got up, pushed her again. They're running. I thought at that point, the second time, I thought I jumped them out of their beds, and they're running straight uphill to this saddle, and it's on a finger coming down off the mountain, and the saddle on the right, you know, that's hardwood, and he goes right up through the center, and then all of a sudden I see the doe track keeps going, and he stops, and then all of a sudden he turns a hard 90 left and goes straight towards the green knob, and I mean, talk about textbook.
Well, everybody, welcome to another episode of Northwoods Whitetails. I am once again your host, Travis Williams, and I'm sitting down here today with a couple of new Northwoods Whitetails guys. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Nathan Sandvil from the White Mountains in New Hampshire.
I'm Shane Sandvil. Same thing, from the White Mountains of New Hampshire.
And who's this guy?
Their dad.
Yep. I'm Steve Sandvil from St. John's, Vermont.
Saw them green plates when you pulled in.
Yep.
Thought maybe Joey made the trip down. Well, thanks for coming. We're sitting in my house here in Meredith, New Hampshire, so it's not too bad of a haul for these guys down from the Whites. So, any of you guys killed deer last year?
Yeah, we both got one. I got 2. Did you show one of your bow, Shane?
Yeah, I got a doe with my bow.
Yeah, we got 2. I was only here for 2 weeks though, because I'm in Colorado now. So.
What part of Colorado are you in?
Right outside of Colorado Springs. It's called Woodland Park.
Nice.
It's up in the mountains.
You like it?
Yeah, I like it. I'm glad I'm still in the mountains. Couldn't do it if I was closer to any towns or anything, or cities. Cities out there are a little different cities in New Hampshire, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's been good.
Cool. So why don't we dive right into a story?
Oh. I did. Last year I got a 11-pointer in Maine. But, I don't know, 12 points, 11 points, whatever. I think I have history with this deer because that 2023, so 21 and 22, both years I missed 2 bucks a year in this area. I've missed 4 bucks in 2 years in this area. And the last one I missed, the second one of the first of 21, I missed that deer, but that was the biggest buck I've ever tracked and I've seen on hoof at 40 yards standing still broadside. But long story short, I missed 2 bucks in one day in this area, one not being very big. But this guy, I mean, just huge foot, stride. He had it all. It looked like a cross-country skier. I mean, you couldn't get a better track. And me and my buddy Ricky, we had started him first thing in the morning. Right as it got light, I found his track. So we tracked him all day. We ended up cutting to a different road after a couple miles of tracking. We go back to the truck because we figured he was headed the other direction. So we go back at the truck. We ended up hopping on a wrong deer track. Long story short, we were headed back for the truck, and we had a truck drive by us, and first truck on that road that day, and there was deer tracks. Not 15 minutes after the truck passed us, there was deer tracks that go down that were stepping in the truck track. So obviously he's fresh. So I didn't go. I don't think we went 150 yards, and I shot at that buck. It wasn't very big, but it was the last day of rifle.
Your buddy was with you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, double teaming him?
Yeah, I actually have GoPro footage of that deer. So this is why I don't use a peep anymore. Actually, is because of these deer these days. So, because I tried it, everybody uses a peep, and trust me, carrying a 760 with a peep is much better than with a scope. But I can't shoot with a peep. I've already determined that of 4 misses, and the problem is all those deer are within 50 yards standing still the first shot minimum. So clearly, I just can't do it. So, anyways. But yeah, no, I shot at that deer. He was facing straight away from me, probably 35 yards, looking back. He gave me all the time I needed. I pulled the trigger, missed. He took off. I missed again, and then missed again. So I shot at him 3 times. Anyway, so then finally get to the truck. As we're going back down to the original track we were on, I could see him coming down the bank, just the cross-country skiing, and I said that I locked up my brakes. I hit the ditch. I didn't even back up. I put the truck in park. My buddy's like, "What'd you see?" I'm like, "Get out of the truck. We're going after him." Didn't even have to go back to look. I just knew. Like, we blew right over track, but I knew. So we take off running on him. He got mixed in with a doe and a coyote, and they were just running all around. So it took us a little bit. Then he crossed. I'm not going to say what he crossed because that might give away. But
we can always beep that out.
Yeah, we'll beep it out now. He crossed something, made a rob. So then he came back around, and he came back up. And where we had missed that buck earlier in the day, granted it's been snowing all day, and so our tracks were snowed in. You couldn't see. You could just see dimples, basically, if that makes sense. And you could see. It was the shape of a human foot, but you couldn't really see tread or anything. And that was probably 3 or 4 hours prior. So he made a loop and came back up to where we had missed that buck. Because obviously after I shot at that first deer, I made sure of all 3 bullets, but I ran after him first because I thought I hit him. Came back, found all 3 bullets, 1 in the dirt, 2 in trees. I instantly knew I missed the deer every shot. Right, my first shot was the one that actually hit the dirt, which is just right at his feet.
They're not laughing at you;
yeah.
They're laughing with you.
Oh yeah.
It was something else I was thinking of.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
No. So, anyways, but this deer, when he hit where we had, because obviously, like I said, I followed through, made sure I missed that deer completely. He went about 400 yards. That's about how far we had tracked him before we came back to check every track, every shot. Sorry. And like I said, no hits. So, but we left that deer. But when we were tracking that monster buck, when he got to where we had followed that deer down in the woods, you could see where he stopped, 4-fingered, or whatever you want to call it. I call it 4-fingered. That's just my term. But basically turned and looked around. You could see where he kind of did a little circle. And then right from where he saw our tracks or smelt us, I don't know, it was hours later, he started zigzagging, like 60 yards one way, 40 yards the other way, 20 yards back and forth zigzagging. And then there was a freshly down spruce. He jumped over that, landed on the other side. You can see where he completely turned around, face down where he zigzagged. And then he just walked away. So I'm like, well, we didn't jump him. But it's even fresher. It's been snowing, and like his tracks are getting fresher and fresher. And this deer, he would feed. You can see where he fed for at least 10, 15 minutes on all these blowdowns, old man's beard. And then he would run. So, like, I would think we'd bust him, but then he would slow down, like, 300 yards later and just go back to a walk. Anyways, so at this point, we're almost back to that road because where I had shot at that buck was right off the side of the road the first time. So he gets up to the road now. There's only, like, probably 45 to 50 minutes left of legal shooting. And I know we're right behind this deer, but we get back to the road, and my buddy's like, I'm done. I'm heading back to the truck. And he had a scope on his 760. I'm like, if that's what you want to do, but meet me right here where we cross the road. And I took off running. Like, I was just full speed, as fast as I could. I was like, I'm going to jump this deer, and I'm going to shoot this deer on the run. That was my plan. It was just to run until I could not run any longer. I was going to run right till I felt comfortable shooting at a deer. And so I didn't go but 300-400 yards. I start coming down over this bank, and this logging road split the bank in half. And, of course, I'm out of breath, so I get down on my knee, and I see that he had crossed a fresh doe track, but he was definitely fresher. So I said, hopefully he's messing around with this doe right down in here somewhere. It's a nice mix of softwood, stream bottom with some hardwood and stuff. and all of a sudden I see this deer stand up 40 yards in front of me down the bank, broadside. And, of course, I've got a peep, so I can't see antlers because his head's in a spruce tree. But I actually could see his left side base in the start of his beam, but I couldn't tell if it was the tree or if it was his antler. And I have to be confident to pull the trigger. That's the way I am. And so I just held it there probably for a minute and a half, right on his shoulder, which everybody says you should center mass, and this is something I learned here, that he's always going to twist on his hind feet probably. Like, that's just what he did. And he did. He twisted on his hind feet. I blew right past his front shoulder. By the time I realized that he was pivoting and that he had the biggest rack I've ever seen, I was still at where his shoulder was. And he had already gone past that. He was faster than I was. Plus, I don't have a trigger done on my 760, so that doesn't help. But, yeah, no. When I just remember him making a bound, and it was just huge. That's all. Like, I didn't cry or nothing, but but I actually made a video about it because, like, I was, it was a really good tracking day, right? And that's what I explained in the video was I've missed 2 bucks today, and I only got 1 shot at that deer. I've shot 4 shots today. I've missed 2 bucks, one of them being the biggest buck I've ever seen in my entire life. All I could remember, and the way I described it to my buddy, was chocolate rack and really wide, and he just had he had a good amount of points. That's just what I remembered. I knew, like, minimum he was a 10-pointer, and minimum he had a 22-inch inside spread. Just the biggest, darkest rack I've ever seen. Huge body, huge hoof. Anyways, so fast forward, I'd missed that buck. But like I said, good day in the tracking woods, right? I successfully tracked and was able to shoot at 2 bucks in northern Maine. Like, to me, that's a killer day. You know what I'm saying? So, and one of them being the biggest buck I've ever seen. So, although I missed him, I learned a lot, too, because he taught me things that, that young buck probably never would have. Like, I've never seen a deer zigzag like that and jump over a dead spruce tree or down spruce tree. And he used that spruce tree as the ability to just basically have his head peeked over it. But anyway, so long story short, I keep hunting this area the next year, where I missed a buck with you, Dad.
Yep.
But we weren't right together, but we were hunting the same area. And then I missed another buck, but I can't remember. I guess I've missed
It's a
too
yearly
many.
thing. We try
It's
to
a
keep
yearly
it tradition.
Do you remember when
Yeah.
they used to put missing kids on milk cartons?
Yes.
That's where his picture should be.
Yeah. I do a lot of missing. So, anyways, this area, it's like a honey hole. I'll put it that way. I was able to find it by tracking a buck with my buddy Ricky into that area, and so it's so thick to get in there. And once you get in there, it's beautiful. Anyways, long story short, so I continue to hunt it. So 22, I missed a couple bucks. And then 23, which was technically last year, I continued to hunt that area. We had no snow the first 3 days, right? Because Friday. I got in Friday. I know I got in Friday because I left Saturday.
Yeah.
But it was Thursday night that we got the snow. Anyways, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I hunted this area, dry ground hard. I had a lot of miles on. Even on the rainy days, I still hunted. But it was, I think, Tuesday. Yeah, it was Tuesday evening. Me and my buddy Trucker were leaving that spot early because it was raining. It was a rainy day. We just had a long day, and it was only like, we were trying to time it to get back to the truck with how far we were. We ended up being like half an hour early. So I get in the truck, and when I say this is a road, if anybody hunts northern Maine, they know that most of the roads that you can drive on aren't really actually roads. And this, like, you pretty much have to not care about your vehicle to get it back there because there's so much just whips and trees grown into the road. But anyway, so we're driving out, and I'm talking to him, having a conversation, and I'm probably going 10, 15 miles an hour. And I look to the right, and as I'm talking to him, I see this deer running, not like right next to the side of the truck, but probably 40, 50, 60 yards into the woods. And all I can see is this rack. And so I slam the truck in park, jump out. Meanwhile, it's been a cold, rainy day, and this gun's been sitting in my armpit now in the truck, and the truck's now warmed up and whatever. So the scope was fogged, but I took off running, and as I run past the truck, loading the gun as I'm running, I go about 50 yards past the truck. I look up to the right, and he's just standing there in between two pine trees. And it's the just huge chocolate rack, gray body. And, of course, it was a little damp that day, so they look a little bit grayer, I feel like, sometimes. But I just remember pulling up my gun, and I couldn't see a single thing through my scope. Now, I have
See-through rings.
See-through rings, yeah. I have see-through rings, but my instinct isn't to go down. My instinct is to wipe off the scope. So I'm wiping off the scope as I see this deer running away, and he gets away. I wouldn't even have flung a bullet unless I had a confident shot on a rainy day like that anyways with him running like that. But he was standing broadside at probably 80 yards just looking at me, and all I could see was just rack. And as he took off, I just remember explaining, like, dark chocolate rack, short, like, I felt like he had shorter points. So anyways, that was like Tuesday. We hunted that spot the next day, Thursday, whatever. Maybe that was Wednesday, but either way, Thursday night we had snow. So the next morning, I was up and gone before I think anybody was awake, if I remember right. Dad, you may have been awake. I can't remember, but because you're an early riser, but I was out the door really early, driving every road in that area to try to find a track, every road I could. So I'd been driving for, I think, 2.5, 3 hours in this area, and I found a bunch of doe tracks, maybe some smaller buck tracks, but I knew if I found that deer's track, I was going to know it. I knew for a fact. And I just hadn't seen the one that I went, wow, that's the one. So, there was a set of 4 doe tracks that had gone down into an area where I had missed that big buck, prior to. But anyways, I keep doing the loops. Now it's daylight, and I'm like, I just got to get in the woods now and just go where I think there's going to be a deer. So, because I hadn't seen what I wanted, but I looking on my OnX, and I'm like, okay, I'm going here. So I start driving, and then all of a sudden I see this road to the left that cuts off the main road there, and I've never been down it. And I don't know what told me to go down it, but I was like, okay, I'm going. So I slam on the brakes. I remember barely making it. I don't even know what told me to go down the road. So I start going down the road. Instantly, doe track, fresh. She's walking right down the side of the road. I get out, look, no buck track. I said, okay, I'm going to follow this track, though, right to the end because a buck could pick her up at any point. So I start following her out. It's getting soft. The snow is almost already starting to kind of melt because the sun's out. It's like 7, I think, in the morning. So snow is kind of already starting to, soften up a little bit. So I'm going. I stop at the end. It's like a mud hole at the end of this. It's like a landing. And I'm sitting there in my truck. The doe track continued straight. No buck track picked her up. And then this was when I was like, okay, I'm done doing this. I'm getting out of my truck. I can't sit in my truck any longer. I'm going to go in the woods. And as I put the truck in reverse, and start to back up and turn, and I'm glancing from one mirror to my next, I just catch movement straight in front of the truck in the woods, probably 80 yards, 60 yards. And as I do, I see a flash of horn. So I slam the truck in park, leave the door wide open, and I'm taking off running. I run, jump, and as I'm running, I just see more movement. And what I didn't realize is the doe that I was tracking with my truck was right there, and he had met her right there. So he had met her on the edge. Now, had he already been following her, and he just wasn't willing to come out in the road, I'm not sure, because I know some bucks, if they go to cross the road, they don't, the amount of times I've gone to at the end of a landing, gone out of my truck, walk 50 yards in the woods, and then I cut a buck track. It's like it's almost like they don't want to cross if they don't have to, because I think some bucks know that they can get tracked from the road. I think they do. So I don't know what the situation was, but he was so hung on that doe that he sat there and watched me sit in my truck, go on X, scroll around for probably a minute, never moved. I mean, I'm assuming he was standing there. There's no way he didn't hear me coming. I mean, I've never had a truck with a stock exhaust that I know of, so I'm just saying, like, there's no way that he didn't know I was there. And I'm the guy where I'll drive my truck through anything. I don't care. I mean, I've smashed mirrors, windows up there. I smashed a mirror on a truck. That was $1,600 to replace that mirror. And I didn't cry about it because
You're doing what you
I
love.
was doing what I love. I thought it was I didn't even get out. I took a video and I said, "How's the hunting, Ricky?" And I panned over and he's in the passenger seat and the tree's halfway through his window. And I just, it just, it is what it is.
All my friends listening, see, I'm not the only one.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of it. Like if you don't get stuck when you're out driving your truck around, I don't think you're having enough fun.
You're not pushing it farther enough, that's
you're
for
not-
sure.
Yeah, exactly. So
I can make it through that.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, no. So I'm running, and I just catch that movement, and so I pull up my gun, and at this point, I don't know what I'm shooting at, but it's Friday, Saturday is our last day, and we're gonna leave Sunday like we normally do, and so he's going through these windows, and I see horn, but he doesn't have long points. He does his the first points G2s are basically they're I think 5 inches, maybe 6.
Yeah, you probably should have let him go.
Yeah, I know. And then the rest of them are just like little acorn points. That's what they look like. They're just like little shark teeth. And so as he's running, I'm not thinking, oh my gosh, this is a huge buck. I'm just thinking this is a buck, and I'm going to shoot because if I miss, well, now I know I have a buck track regardless. And I have shot at running deer, but usually my first shot's not at running deer. I've never shot at a deer the first time while it's running. But this year I'm running a 1.5 by 4. So pigplex. But so like I said, I pull up, he comes through a window, and I touch off around, not thinking it was, basically worth much. But as I do, I just see him roll over backwards. And at this point, I still have no idea how big this deer is. And I actually have video of me running up like, oh, boys, I just shot one, and whatever. And then so once I get up, I realize that he wasn't dead. His head was tipped to the right. He was facing the direction that he was actually coming from, so he had completely flipped over backwards. But I shot him with a 35 Whalen, and I hit him high in the spine. But I didn't know where I hit him at the time, but I instantly knew that he wasn't down, so I shut my phone off. That clip was very quick. So I shut my phone off instantly, finished him right there. I wasn't going to sit around and wait. But it didn't. I didn't realize how big he was until I was probably 5-10 yards from him.
Are you going to leave out the fact that you puked, or are we going to put this on the podcast?
So then...
It's on there now.
Yeah, it's on there now. So I will say I did, yes, after I called you, Nate, I was in the midst of, I don't know what happened. I
love it.
Yeah, it was definitely a very exciting moment, I'll put it that way. But what's funny is Nate's in Colorado at this time, and the only person I could get in touch with was Nate. So thank goodness I'm not far from my truck, which I would have left the deer there if I was really far. I don't mind leaving a deer somewhere. I have Onyx. I have just the ability to get back to where I was. But and I would have gone and got some help or got service, but somehow I was only able to call Nate. He answered. I'm pretty sure my first thing I said was, I just shot a 12 pointer.
Yeah, you just said, I just shot a monster or something like that. And I'm like, are you serious? And I was laying in bed. It was 5 o'clock because I'm 2 hours behind you. And I knew the second that phone was ringing and I roll over and I saw it was you. And I'm like, I'm like, there's probably a good chance because that's first light there, which is usually your best bet. So either you were calling me to tell me I'm on a big track and you were all jazzed up, or something happened.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think it was like 7 or 7:30 because at this point, Ricky and Trucker had called me and said that they were on a buck as well. So it was definitely probably an hour, maybe after legal shooting. I don't remember that time of year exactly what legal shooting is, but either way, I definitely, it made me sick to my stomach once I saw the rack, just because he was, so impressed. And I knew instantly the deer was over 200 pounds. There's no doubt in my mind. And I just couldn't believe that it went down that way. And, it's definitely not the way that I expected to shoot a deer like that. No doubt in my mind. I did not. But I just kind of took the moment, and I only have a couple pictures of it in that situation. Like I put my phone away after, getting off the phone with you, Nate, and obviously, regaining myself because I was, throwing up, and I just, I was like, okay, this happened. It happened so fast. I wasn't looking for deer. I was literally panning from my right mirror to my left mirror when I saw him. And so, Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say that I definitely redeemed myself for the last couple years of missing bucks for sure.
Do you think there was a chance that buck was watching you and was like, oh, I remember him?
Yes.
Yeah, he's
His scope's fogged up. Don't worry about it.
he's not going to shoot me.
The thing is he looks identical to the deer that I saw at 80 yards standing broadside. And no, now we're talking a 2-year difference of the time from when I missed that one buck tracking when he stood about his bed 40 yards below me when I was on that walking road. Could it be the same deer? I think it could be the same deer. Is it the same deer? I'll never know. But it's the same area. I mean, as the crow flies, it's less than a mile from where, so I'm like, all these deer are all within, as the crow flies, a mile or two. So, but I'm still confident that the deer I saw first, that earlier in that week, is the deer that I ended up getting. And like I said, it's not the way I wanted to get him. I want to shoot a deer tracking. I think we all want to. That's the way we want to shoot a deer. But in that situation, I always said I'd never shoot. If I knew there was a huge buck on the side of the road, I would never. If I saw it, I wouldn't shoot it from the road. I always said that. And although I wasn't even on the road, I was on a landing. But and for those listening, Maine, you can shoot from the road if it's dirt. I don't probably have to clear that for most of you, but yeah, no. So I never thought I'd shoot a deer like that, and now that I did, I don't know that I'd ever do it again. But when you're in the heat of the moment, it happens.
Yeah, but that's a little. I don't know. I feel like that's a little different. Like you were following deer tracks, you were looking for a deer. Like I actually almost shot one. The story I was telling you earlier, where I messed up and shot the wrong buck. Yeah. I had gotten up early like he had. It was 3:30 in the morning, and I'd found this huge buck track. Went out this log road, and it was still not legal shooting light, so I went up and around because I knew it was another road, and he didn't come out. I actually hiked out because there's a culvert that's washed out, and I hiked out at like a half a mile, came back. I'm like, I better get back there for, there's a truck parked on my track. And I get back there, and I'm coming up the road, and that buck track had come out left to right and was walking up the road and dipped down on the right. Well, I knew there was another road that went in and dead-ended. So I'd pulled in, and I was putting my truck in park to get out to go track that buck, and I look up, and he's standing out in the cut looking at me with this huge halo over his head. Giant buck. And I literally tried to put it in park. It was not in park, by the way, because it almost ran me over. And tried to get the gun up and didn't get a shot. But if I had, I would have. And, it's circumstantial. Now, with that being said, if I was driving down, pick a Maine, McGalloway Mountain Road, on my way to hunt, I look over and there's a buck. I don't know if I'm going to hop out to shoot it. You know what I mean? That's a different circumstance, in my opinion. But that was a great story. Thank you for sharing. So what was that? That one weighed like what? 190 something?
241.
Jeez.
Right on the money.
What a hammer.
So, yeah.
Yeah, Shane likes to shoot him not far from the truck, and it's always a spike horn or a 240-pound, 20-inch plus wide buck.
Yeah.
What happens, yeah. I'm on one side of the scale or the other.
So it sounds like the jury's out because you didn't like the peep. You went to the scope, then the scope was fogged. Yeah.
So I actually love that scope, and so he's grinning at me right now because he did tell me probably earlier in the week, I have anti-fog wipes that we've been using for years, and I hadn't done that to my gun. Now, the thing is yes, if my scope wasn't fogged, there would have been lead going downrange at that deer because I had my gun up. He was standing still. I just couldn't see a thing through my scope. Yes, when I got back that night, did I do what my dad told me to do earlier in the week?
You should always do what your dad says.
110%. That's the first thing I think I did.
Mm-hmm.
But, no, that was definitely. I just like the over and under setup. That's what I've always ran on my 30-30.
Yep. So you guys look a lot alike.
Yeah, we're twins. We didn't mention that.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I knew.
Yeah.
Figured the listeners might want to know
we
if
are
you guys.
twins, which that adds a little bit to it. I will say, everybody talks about like, do you like a tracking partner, solo, or whatever? I'm more of a solo type for sure, but I will say it probably helps when me and Shane track. We do really well together, which means we should probably do a little more than we do. Yeah. But I think it's because we are twins. It's the same thing in sports in high school. It was like you just have that you're always together. So like we can look at each other and we don't have to talk. We just kind of know. You know what I mean? I just look at you and this, we get it. But So that's helpful.
Who's
That's
older?
helpful. I am.
How do you know
I'm
that?
older. That's what my mom told me. He pushed me out.
What do you mean?
No. I was there. I saw the whole thing. We weren't even in the room we were supposed to be in, and all of a sudden, their mom was like, "What?" And the doctor said, "Don't push." She said, "I'm not." And the doctor just got there in time to catch him flying out, followed by his 2 feet.
I was sick and tired of him. He was annoying me.
Right.
Sick of being womb mates.
Yeah.
exactly.
That's awesome.
But
And
yeah.
we work together well. Like
Yeah, we do.
we've like your 10-pointer in New Hampshire, that 8-pointer in Maine that I got. Like
Same year.
it's just same year. It's just we work so well together because we have the same hunting technique. We can keep up with each other. Although if anybody doesn't keep up with anybody, I don't keep up with Nate because Nate is like he just runs. His strategy is do a lot of running. And I'm more of the, I think maybe a little bit more reserved than that, or maybe I just don't have the energy to do it. I'm not sure what it is. But deer take off, and Nate's gone. And then I try to keep up, but, I've got my phone out. I'm trying to film, too, and Nate's just running full speed.
But the kid will do 15 miles and then do it again the next day.
I like.
Look at those
days.
long legs on these two.
They are.
It's not fair.
Honestly, they get through the woods so smooth, quiet, and cover so much ground effortlessly. It's, I can't. I got nothing for them now. I can't keep up.
We haven't always done that, though, have we, Dad?
No.
Quiet?
Quiet and stealthy.
So when that's how you guys started out.
Yeah, I feel bad for you. I look back and I'm like, wow.
Well, it's funny. I said to my dad once, I said, "Dad, God, you've been shooting some really good bucks. What happened?" And he just looked at me and went, "You just say that out loud?" I've been dragging your ass around for 2 years, 15 years, and now finally I don't have you behind me. I'm killing some deer.
Yeah.
But I will say, these two boys absolutely ruined hunting for me. And I mean that in the best terms. I always hunted, and their older sisters hunted with me, and that was awesome. But I would go to Maine for a week by myself and have a great time. I didn't need someone else hunting with me. If someone came with me, that was great. But now that they've got bigger and we don't always hunt together, I'm missing something when they're not with me. I always feel like I'm missing out when I don't have one of them or both of them with me.
Oh,
So
I'm sure.
It's, yeah.
So is that how you guys got into hunting from
yeah.
your dad,
100%.
Steve?
Yeah, 100%. I remember a lot of just mornings of we always would plan, like opening day was, like a holiday, turkey season, youth weekend was same thing. And, open the door, and usually you would force us to get up because we wouldn't move very fast. I don't remember moving very fast, but yeah, we would do a lot of, you were pretty patient. I remember a lot of times where, we've messed up on some really big bucks, and it's all because of us, Shane stopped laughing, like he's coming right down the hill at us, and, just because we're kids, we're like giggling or trying to, whatever, eat our peanut butter jelly sandwich, and there's 2 deer in front of us or whatever.
Yeah.
Or dad says, sit here, and you're 10 years old, so you know better than your dad.
Of course.
And so you're like, no, I want to sit at this tree and face this direction. And the next thing you know, you have a forward pointer chase a doe 20 yards behind you, and you're sitting there as a kid, like frozen to the tree. You can't do anything, even though you could just pull the trigger and you'd hit him if you were on the other side of the tree, like your dad told you to. So, but yeah, no, he's hauled us around quite a bit, and now, also 200 yards in, he's carrying 3 backpacks now, and he's got 2 guns slung over his shoulder because we can't carry him anymore. I think it's kind of the other way now. Usually now we're carrying all your stuff.
So you guys must throw Dad a bone and be like, "Hey, Dad, I just left camp. Giant buck track. Come jump on it."
I don't know about the tracking part, but do we if we find spots, the biggest thing I learned about tracking is you learn so much about deer's behavior, especially big bucks' behavior, and there's definitely times where all the time, like we'll go into an area where I think, okay, I'm going to cut a track or an area I want to be in, and then I'm like, Dad, this is the spot to go set up. Like the clear cut that you hunt now, I wouldn't have found that unless I was out there. And I'm not saying I gave it to you because I don't think that's how that works. But, now you hunt that and you love it.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
I-
a great.
I-
It's got the perfect homemade or not even man-made, just natural blind you could ever imagine. A clear cut with a huge,
The wind direction is always perfect.
it's
I've got a vantage point.
surrounded
I
by a
see, I see
swamp.
deer. I got my phone. I'm videoing them.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a shooter buck. I mean, I've smaller buck.
Yeah,
But-
that 4-pointer or whatever
Yeah.
came right in front of you. No, it's just like a land. It's just like a land mass that sits like I don't even know how. It's like almost like a
It's a
blind.
pillar.
It's a pillar in the middle of a clear cut that's hidden. That's not near any roads that are drivable. That's not near any of this. So it's just a perfect spot. But yeah, no, it just. I mean, me and Nate definitely track more because as kids we really just mostly sat. Which obviously
the
as kids
easiest
it's
to
harder.
do.
Yeah, it's easy, especially with two of us. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, especially like you say when you guys were younger. But there was that one that walked up to us as we were checking the trail camera.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we
tracked
did
that
track
one.
him.
Yeah, we did track him.
after we didn't listen to you.
Didn't listen to me.
Yeah, we could have shot him.
I
Hey,
said,
boys, be looking. You know, there's probably going to be deer coming in. And we were like right over his shoulder, or probably under his shoulder at that age, looking at what's on the trail camera? Probably just like a couple squirrels and tree branches. And then all of a sudden we hear one blow and turn around. And there's just this racker that was like 40 yards just running away. And his tracks were coming right at us. If we were turned around, we would have probably seen him. I would hope so.
Yeah.
So, no, it's pretty.
So how did you guys get into tracking then? Like, did you guys just?
I would say I started first. I
Yeah.
would watch like Gerald Fortin. I think Joe DeNito was on there. I think a little bit like Hal Blood and all them, and we had moved to the White Mountains, and there's these huge woods, and so I'm like, that's and everybody that kills like big bucks every year, they're trackers. So when I turned 16, I put it in my mind that now that I have my license, I'll drive roads and I can hunt by myself legally now. And I drove roads, and I got on an absolute giant. So lucky. I wish I could get on another one like that in the White Mountains again. Absolute giant, and get on him. Cross the river. Actually, it was a awesome tracking experience. Cross the river, right in front of me. He's got 3 does with him, completely occupied. And goes into these perfect woods, and all of a sudden I jump these 2 deer out of their beds, and they blow at me. And at first I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if those are him. Go over, definitely not. I'm like, oh, they look like I'm a kid. I'm 16, first time tracking. I'm like, yeah, they're probably $2 because they were running, and so their tracks look huge. So I'm like, I had no idea what I was doing. So I'm like, but I'll track them. Tracked them, and coming out of the swamp, there's this hardwood ridge that rolls up. I remember stopping and thinking, man, in all these videos, they always tell you there's times where like you should stop and just sit for a second. So I'm just like, I guess I'll just stop and sit. And I stopped for a second, and then all of a sudden I see these feet in the hardwoods just moving. And I'm like, I pull up and I'm like, oh, what is it? And then I'm just like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, all of a sudden I see to the left this spike horn start walking down over. And I'm like, well, what's the other one though? What's the other one? And I knew there was a huge buck in there. And then I just bleated with my mouth. I just went, meh. And then all of a sudden the one that I couldn't see just turns right straight at me and just starts straight down the hill at me from like 120 yards to I shot him at like 35. He just came right straight to me, a little 4-pointer. Well, I should have shot the spike horn. It was definitely bigger bodied, and it was a spike horn. And I shoot the 1 4-pointer that's already got brow tine started. Probably would have been a beauty. But just the adrenaline of him coming straight at me, I mean, it was awesome. And
So you were hooked then.
so I was hooked the second I shot him, and that was my first solo buck. I'd never shot a deer without family there. And I drug him out. And before that, my grandfather's brother was up, and when I first found that track, I drove back up to the house to tell them all these old guys about it, and they were like, oh yeah, buddy, you're just a kid kind of thing. Not really. I mean, they're great guys, but they didn't 100% listen to me at how big this track was. And I went down there, and when I shot it, I did get service to call my grandfather, and when I dragged that buck out of the swamp, across the street, I floated him across the river and got him to the bank. Those guys met me, and they were all like, congratulations, buddy. Like, that's so awesome. Like, you actually did it. And I think that feeling was just like, all these old guys were like, I can't believe you actually did. You were right. There was a track. You got on it and you killed it. And I was like, just all that just really worked. And then the next year, now I'm hooked. I'm a big woods tracker. So next year we go out and then Shane, we were hiking. That's right. We were really at that age. How old were we? Oh, so 16 to 17. So also we're growing, and anybody that's tracked knows physically you're that matters a lot too. Like how much ground you can cover and stuff like that. So we're getting stronger and be able to go further too. In 17, when we hit 17, that's when. Oh wait, no, yeah, 17. Never mind, 17. I put it on my mind though that I was only going to shoot a big deer, and I remember. I mean, I have permission from my dad, who's sitting here. If I saw a big enough track, it's okay to take the day off, but maybe only one day. And my mom, just don't tell her until after. And but anyways, so I remember driving. I even remember driving down the road, and I got on a buck track one day before school. I would drive the roads every day if there was snow, and I'm just hoping for a big one. And one day I was driving down the road, cut a track. I even tracked him like 300, 400 yards in the road and off the road, and he was probably 170, 80-pound buck, and I still backed off of him. And I look back down, I'm like, I can't believe I had that willpower, but I backed off of him, went to school, and I remember one day, I think I took the day off. I can't remember. And anyways,
Hold on. There was one deer that you'd seen on trail camera.
Yeah.
My grandfather's got a trail camera out that he used to do it. He's not a hunter, but he just likes putting a trail camera out. And I went out, and there was this slammer track that went by, and I checked the camera, and it was the big buck in the area, big 8-pointer. And I'm like, no way, all these things are lining up. Gone on his track, tracked him instantly into a barnyard across the road, ran into my neighbor, and he's an old guy, experienced, killed a lot of big bucks in the area. So I'm like, hey, do you want to track this buck with me? Like, I know it's the big 8-pointer and stuff like that. And he goes, oh, I have to bring the kids to town. You go for it, buddy. He's a nice guy. He's like, yeah, you go for it. Get on him. Stay on him. But I'm just a kid. I'm like, what the heck? So I do loop out of the barnyard, and I'm like, I'll just pick the biggest track and go with it. First track I find I'm like, that's a nice buck. So at this point, don't even think it's probably the same buck. We're going. There's one like summer home on the road, a couple of summer homes, but this one goes right up on their leach field. It's like this little shed cabin thing, makes a scrape under a beach whip on top of their man-made leach field. I thought that was hilarious. Went right up the driveway. I hit the road, and it's funny because our neighbor, it's a dirt road, but our neighbor or whatever was like, she walked her dogs every morning, and I just like look at her. I love this is why I love the country. She just looks at me, and she's like, she knows where I am kind of. I just wave, and she's like, good luck. And I just keep going. Like, I just love that. And I go up across the ridge, and he's going up, and I'm like, man, this is a nice buck. And then all of a sudden he crosses another buck track the same size, and the first 5 saplings in front of him all destroyed, just ripped right out of the ground. He was an angry deer. He was actually a bully. Like, some deer have different characteristics. I'm a firm believer he was a bully. And he's sidling, and all of a sudden he just darts from there like 300 yards, finds 4 does, splits one off of them, off the group. The doe, he takes a doe, he pushes her hard up, beds down with her, and then he must have got sick and tired of waiting, got up, pushed her again. They're running. I thought at that point, the second time, I thought I jumped them out of their beds, and they're running straight uphill to this saddle, and it's on a finger coming down off the mountain, and the saddle on the right, that's hardwood. And he goes right up through the center, and then all of a sudden I see the doe track keeps going, and he stops. And then all of a sudden he turns a hard 90 left and goes straight towards the green knob. And I mean, talk about textbook. I just remember thinking, I don't know anything, but I know that if he's going to leave a doe that he just spent all that time with to go left towards the green knob, he's got to be laying down. Like, I knew enough to know that, and I just put the brakes on. I just slowed right into it, and there's these ledges. He was going up and eating moss and some old man's beard, and I just remember him jumping up over the top, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I wonder if there's a deer, like, I wonder if he beds right on the other side of that, and all of a sudden I hear this deer. When a big deer comes out of the bed, you can almost hear, like, them suck that air into their lungs or whatever the noise is. It's like a...
It's almost like a grunt.
It's almost like a grunt, yeah, but it's like them sucking the air out, and I heard it, and I just instantly just hit 3 grunts, just burp, burp, burp. And all of a sudden I thought I heard whatever was running stop, so I just clicked my safety off, and there was this log in front of me, And I'm like, oh, I'm just going to step up on that. And he's going to be standing right there, 20 yards, hopefully shoot him. I step up and I see a deer like 40 yards and all I see is his butt. And he's quartered away and his head's in a pine tree. It was just perfect because he couldn't really see me either. I pull up and I'm like, I have my crosshairs. Felt like 5 minutes, probably only like a minute though. And I'm like leaning to one side of the tree in front of me to the other. Can't see nothing. Can't see any headgear, but I can just see how fat he is. I'm like, this got to be him. And obviously the tracks are right there and everything. But I didn't shoot, and I'm just like holding on him. And then all of a sudden, inside the pine tree, I see his head turn to take off, and instantly I knew what it was because long G3 with a shorter G2 and just that gorgeous 8-point frame. I instantly knew, touched off, hit him, I think like in the chest area in front of the shoulder, but I ran up, no blood. I ran past where I shot at him. I'm the kid, but I look back now and it's good to slow down. One thing I've learned, just slow down.
Now that you're
now that I'm old, old 21.
Yeah.
So, but I've learned to just calm down, right? Sure. Don't run past don't step where you shot him. Don't, just take your time. And anyways, I ran past that and I'm like looking for blood. He's running perfect. And I'm like, no way did I just screw that up. I've never seen a buck like this in my life. And then all of a sudden on one birch tree twig, I see blood. It was a cold day. I remember that, like super cold. And the blood was already frozen and I touch it and it melted and it was red and it was blood. And I'm like, no way. There's no way. And then I go a little bit more and then I start seeing drips of blood and I'm like, I can't believe I hit him. Like he's piled up. Every other deer I'd ever shot just piled right there. And all of a sudden I go like 60 yards, 70 yards. There was already a bed. And I'm like, how did I miss him? Like when I ran up, it's because I was just, my mind was I was just running. But anyways, and then I keep doing that. He just keeps bedding down. And then it was so thick at that mountaintop. I mean, we're jumping over lay downs, going through just this nasty stuff. You can't see sometimes 10 yards in front of you. And then all of a sudden I saw his feet at one point and then every time he took off going downhill, and that's another reason why I knew he was wounded, because he didn't stay at the top. He was not feeling good. He was going downhill. And every time he took off in the beach whips, the old logging, I could hear his rack hitting and that was just like a tease every time. I mean, I had never experienced that. With moose I had, but with a deer, I'm like, this thing, it's giant. I can't believe it, but he's bleeding. And I think the last time I jumped him. I said, the next time I jump him, I'm going to run after him like an Indian. Just run him right down. That's my
Seems
plan.
to work for your brother.
Yeah, I know. So I'm like, I'm going to run him down. And what happened was I was moving so fast. There was this log that went across the logging road, and he had met another nice buck track, but it was older. Well, that buck track had gone – oh, that's right. That buck track had gone to the left. And through the commotion, I didn't think he could jump over that log, which is so weird because he bed down like 4 times before that. But he had the strength and the might to jump over that log. And I didn't see him do that. I saw that track go down the left, so I go down. And that track goes like 40 yards, turn 90. Now it's paralleling that logging road, and the logging road's uphill. And I'm going on this track, and all of a sudden there's no blood. So now I'm freaking out. And I'm just, like I said, I'm young, so I'm not taking my time. And I'm like, now he's clotting up, and he's not wounded. So I'm not going to get him. All these nervous thoughts. I'm going. And now I'm picking up speed. And all of a sudden, I hear a tine hit a tree branch to my right. And I look up, and it's him. I had passed him, and he was still on that logging road because that's a path of least resistance, and he was not feeling good. And he saw me meet him, like, in the hardwoods, and he just turned, and I remember taking off like I've never ran before, and I hit that logging road. It was like 60 yards, and he's, like, now, like, 95 yards, and he's just, I mean, he was hurt bad. But that deer had so much drive inside of him. I've never chased a deer like that. And he just was like this, and I could see him limping, and I just pulled up, and boom, racked another one in, boom, as he was going down off the thing, and took his rear end right out from underneath him, and one side, and yet that deer still managed to push himself 40 yards off that road. He actually blew all of his front teeth out because he had just so much. I don't know what it was about him, but that deer was like, if I could describe him, it'd be like Mike Tyson, because he just has this like mental drive. I know he did, because The taxidermist even found a piece of 1.5 inch horn stuck right between his horns, right in the center of his cap. Just like
You did a lot of other bucks a favor that day.
Yeah. So he's got scars on his neck and stuff like that. And it's funny. So that trail camera only picked up one other buck that was a 3-year-old. And that buck would only come around like once a week, maybe. And then the rest were like yearling bucks. The next year, we didn't move that camera. We got 7 to 8 mature bucks on camera. And I tell you right now, that area, after he got taken out of it, that area got filled with more bucks. And I tell you right now, that's why I know that deer was a bully. Because he 100% just must have just beat the crap out of every deer he came into. I mean, he's got scars on his neck. And he also, the meat cutter, where he goes, I found plenty of your bullets. You shot at him enough times, kind of picking on me. He goes, but did you have someone else with you? And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, there's a 270 bullet in him too. I go, what? And he goes, yeah, there's a 270 bullet in him, right lodged up against his shoulder blade. Wow. And that deer he had no issues. But I think the reason why I killed him is because, some bucks you can grunt in, some you can't. Well, I think when I hit him with 3 grunts, he hit his brakes really hard because that was his personality. Was like, if you're in my territory, I'm going to kick the crap out of you. Let's go. And I think I think it worked with him. Some deer, I don't think it works with. You grunt at them, and they're like, yeah, I don't want to fight you. Even if it's the biggest racked, bodied buck in the woods, doesn't mean he's a fighter every time, just like people. But I know for a fact he was a fighter because, there was plenty of
What did he end up being?
208. And that was like the 3rd week of season. Shorter deer, still, decent deer, but his chest cavity was insane. Just absolutely insane. I remember that was the first big deer I'd shot. All the other deer were, 140-pound 4-pointers. I remember reaching up to grab his heart, and his chest cavity was so big, my inside of my elbow, my bicep hit his chest bone, and I still wasn't to the top of his chest, his cage. I remember thinking, that's never happened before, just because how much bigger he was.
Yeah.
And I knew he was a big deer. You got to remember, I'm 17 years old, just picked up this tracking thing. I'm looking at a 208-pound absolute, he scored, Charlie Foote scored him at 130 in like 7/8. Yeah. So that's a nice, clean, typical 8-pointer. For around here, that's a good buck. And, I just remember sitting down, taking in the moment. I think I sat there for like 5-6 minutes and kind of a little bit in disbelief. And then I just remember couldn't wait to get him back to show people, like Shane and Dad and everything, because this tracking thing's working. That's how I got into tracking, I guess. Those are the first 2. That first one hooked me because I'm like, wow, this is easy. You just find a track, cross the road, and you shoot a deer like an hour later. I'm like, I like this. I don't have to sit. And then that next year I tracked quite a few bucks, I guess. But then I shot that big one. And, man, ever since then, just been straight hooked. And then the next year we did that in Maine. So lucky. But that day was opening day, and I'll tell you right now, for non-residents, and I'll tell you right now, that weather was miserable when Shane shot his first big deer in Maine. And that weather, I remember the Big Woods Buck podcast saying none of the guys in camp none of them found really a track because it was just one of those days. The wind's blowing 40 miles an hour, fresh snow from the night. But, a track 10 minutes old looks like it's 4 hours old. And I remember we were going up this side road, and when we cut that track, I remember thinking, man, his stride looks big and stuff, but it's so old, and I'm still young. We're still young, so we're like, hemming and hawing on it. And then we're like, let's just check it out. It's the only deer we can find, really. Actually, earlier in the day, we did jump 2 does in a swamp, but
yeah.
Then we tracked that buck, and long story short, he wasn't going far. Now we know that they do that in that weather. So if you find a track, it's the best day to kill them. They can't hear you coming.
Oh yeah,
so he ended up shooting that buck. That buck weighed it was like over 24 hours because the next day we went out and it was a freezing cold day.
You had to leave him?
Yeah, we got him out. We only tracked that deer for 15 minutes and Shane shot him in his bed.
You double teaming him?
Yeah, double teaming him. Shane shot him in his bed at like 12 yards. And when we walked up to him, I remember, Shane.
I'm gonna tell you straight up, I didn't think he was that big. That's why spike horns or slobs. I was like, that's my range there, because he had just made a rub and
On
he
just
had
a little
bedded down.
sapling.
He had bedded down, and I thought Nate was definitely more into tracking at this time, 110%, and then obviously we had the Benoit videos that obviously had us watching those too when we were younger too. So I knew about tracking, but I just kind of always grew up sitting. That's just kind of what we did. So,
Right.
but yeah, so this deer he had made that rub, so I was now confident he was a buck, and then I didn't go. Nate was still filming, and I didn't go but 40, 50 yards, and I'm pushing through beach whips, and as I do, I look up to my right at like 15 steps, and there's just this deer laying there, looking in my direction, but not at me. But the wind's whipping. There's so much noise, and all I can see is just bases. So I pull up the old 30-30 on 7 power, pull back the hammer, and all I just remember is seeing rack, like just the bases basically. And then it was pretty thick in there, so I don't know how I didn't hit something else, but like a tree branch or something, then just quickly spun down right on the neck, pulled the trigger. As I ran around the corner, I think one of my first thoughts was I just shot a mountable buck, because all you could see was just huge like it was just so wide.
22, right?
22 inch inside spread. So
This was Maine.
Yeah,
This is
Maine.
Maine.
So, and this was my first buck that I tracked that I had gotten, and it happened all so fast. I was not expecting him to be right there. And I just remember Nate, I was like thinking, oh, this track's, old. And Nate just kept saying, no, it's not that old. It's not that old. And I hadn't gotten into as much as he had. So it was just like, I was so in shock too. And like, I had shot some nice 8-pointers Vermont, but your typical 160-pound 8-pointer, nothing crazy. But like I said, when I came around that corner and I just saw how wide he was and how fat he was, I mean, like he was just massive. So, and to me, I just freaked out. I just lost it. But I didn't even know where I kind of hit him at the time. But eventually, we got up there, finished him off, celebrated, screamed a lot. And
Any puking?
No, not that time. No,
not this time.
And then, we got him back to the truck. At this time, I think it's noon probably.
Yeah.
But we wanted to surprise everybody at camp. So what we did was, yes.
Yep.
So what we did was I also, I'm the type of guy where, what's cooler than one deer back at deer camp? 2 or 3. So if I pull somebody out of the woods,
Right.
then that's less chance of them getting one. But anyway, so we get back to camp.
We told Dad. Well, Dad asked us.
Yeah.
Dad asked us, "Is there, what did he say?
Any
sign?" And we said, didn't we say the sign is no longer being made? And I don't think he really got that. And then we said we found this giant moose shed, and it actually is so big it took us a long time to get out of the woods, and he had no idea. And then, so a little lying, but it's a good lie, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we got to camp, and then we couldn't help ourselves. And Jake,
Jake,
a kid in camp, one of the first years ever been to Maine, not, hasn't done a ton of deer hunting. Well, we dropped that tailgate. I have video of it, and his eyes were like, what? I mean, this thing under the tunnel cover, his rack was only a couple inches from the tunnel cover laying on his side. I mean, he was just super wide. And then we waited for everyone. Oh, and then the neighbor came over, and the neighbor was freaking out.
Oh,
He's like, he was more excited than I think anybody. He was like
2 young boys with a 238 and a half.
238 and a half after after over 24 hours of
So
sitting.
you shot one 240 and 238 and you're 21?
Yeah.
Get out of my house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I
The
feel.
thing is,
So you know how you always want better for your kids?
Yeah.
The biggest deer in the family is not exactly on that list.
That's enough. All right. You've proved your point. Cut it out.
Yep.
Yeah, and I love it too. Shane always says, "Man, I'll never beat that one," and then calls me, shoots that thing, and oops, I guess I beat it.
yeah.
Not just kidding. No, that was, man. I remember we were like, "How much do you?" Shane's like, "How much do you think it weighs?"
180, 190.
180, 190. I look back now. I look at photos. I'm like,
Oh my
we,
gosh.
We pulled a Jersey cow out of the woods.
His neck from behind his ears didn't thin. It wasn't thinner than where it was at his shoulders. I swear.
No,
It was just.
that buck was insane.
Yeah.
But should have weighed him the first day. Who knows how
Yeah.
much they always weigh?
I bet you that he lost 5 pounds.
Yeah, I know. And
Yeah.
the thing too is it was so cold that night, and I know temperature has a lot of effect to drying him out, that he was frozen to our mat in my bed in my truck. And it was over 24 hours because the next day
Yeah.
I tracked all day, and then we
Yeah.
weighed him in at the end of the day.
Well, not all day, but
Well-
basically what ended up happening is we got him back into the truck, went to camp, waited at camp. When everybody got back to camp, now, Dad, you sit right till dark, so you didn't come out till, you didn't get back till probably an hour after dark. Like, it was a while. And I remember calling you because I was, like, anxious. I was, like, waiting for him to get back. I remember, are you okay, whatever. Anyway, so you got back, but I just remember everybody came out, and I was showing pictures of this deer to people Scott.
Yeah.
I was like, my buddy from New Hampshire just shot this, and I didn't show the picture of me with it. It was just the deer, and he's like, oh my gosh, that thing's a corker. And little does he know the thing's only 15 yards from him in the bed of the truck, just with the tunnel covered up. So, but yeah, no, Dad got back, and then I said, look at this moose shed, popped tailgate, and there he is laying there. And, it was a really good moment.
That's amazing.
Then the neighbor came over and said, "You must be one proud dad." And,
Yeah.
But you guys are forgetting one really cool piece of this story.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. That is really
Yeah.
cool.
Now that you say that. So the first year, Dad had been bringing us up there for a while.
Can I pause just for a second?
Yeah.
So is this like a family camp or?
No, so I started going up there when I was 19. My girlfriend at the time, her dad brought me up there, and I was hooked. I didn't get one, but I was absolutely hooked. And I actually tracked that year on the last day. Finally had snow, tracked, and we had to leave. But and then I've tried to go up every year, but money and time and everything. But I've been up quite a few times, and I've done pretty.
You've
well.
got some nice deer.
Yeah, I've got a couple up there.
A couple decent ones.
Yep. And then as my boys got older, and I started brainwashing them into deer hunting early. I mean, they were watching deer hunting videos while they were still like on bottles, and I still remember them buying them like little hunting chairs and a little hunting hat, and they'd be sitting in their diaper with their toy guns, and their sister would come to the room, and they'd be rattling antlers, and they'd pretend to shoot their sister, and she'd fall, and then they'd jump up and drag their
play that with Adelina.
drag her across the floor. And so yeah, they've just literally been up to their eyeballs in hunting through their whole life, and I couldn't wait for them to get old enough. And so their first year brought them up, and to bring two 11-year-olds up into those big woods and stuff, and it tracking, I think is absolutely awesome. But when you're tracking with two 11-year-olds or when they were younger, it wasn't working. It wasn't working. We tried it on a couple deer, and it's just the deer hears footsteps and hears me shh 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 shh.
Yeah.
And then so they're 11. I bring them to Maine for the first time, and on our way out, I said, I know this great spot. It's got this beautiful overlook. So we drive up there, and I take their picture for the trip picture, the two of them holding their 30-30s that were just about as big as them.
Yeah.
I have that picture,
And
but it was me.
yep.
Yep.
So flash forward to how old?
It would have been 2020, so we'd have been, 18, 19, whatever.
It was 18 because it was the year
18.
after I shot my first 20-pounder.
Yeah.
So 7 years later,
Yeah.
they're driving around. They pick up that track.
And where was it? It was right
And-
there.
They park their truck 30 feet from where that picture was
Come
taken.
on.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
We shot that buck
seriously.
at that right off that landing.
That was my
Is
first.
this what you were about to say?
Yeah, that's what.
No kidding.
Yeah, so it was the first. So the first year we gone up. Anybody that hunts northern Maine knows that there's a million logging roads, right? You couldn't drive every road.
10 million.
Yeah, you couldn't drive every road you wanted to. You just couldn't. It's not possible. But yeah, so that picture in that truck. I mean, where you were standing when you took the picture of us is probably where the truck
The
was
bumper
parked.
was.
Like, it's just.
All right, that's it. I'm going to dig up my picture.
Yeah.
And my dad took it. It was the first time he ever took me to Pittsburgh. I was wearing like a sweater. It was the end of the day. We'd gone hunting. And the same thing. I'm kneeling down, my 30-30, proud as a peacock,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the odds of that? When we figured that out, Dad's like, "Where'd you do it?" And we're like telling him, and then he's like, "You guys remember that picture?" And we're like, "No way." I mean, the odds.
Got to
of that
give
are
you
just-
goosebumps.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
the odds of that are just that year was the best year I'd say as a family as a whole we've done because
Yeah, because you
then
got
we
that
went to
9-pointer,
yeah
right?
well, yeah we went home and then you shot that 9-pointer, Dad.
8, 9, and 10.
Yeah, 8, 9, and 10.
Which we tracked that 10
Yeah, which we
together.
tracked that double team that same
Was that
thing.
New Hampshire?
New Hampshire, yeah. And at that time we both had pumps, right? I believe, or at least I
had my
did.
30. I had my 30-30 that day.
But I went back to I put a peep on my 30-30, and I'm like, my goal was, you know what? Let's shoot a buck with my first, real hunting rifle. And so I went back to that. So it was just cool that we both shot good bucks with our levers that we started with that year in tracking them. Both double team, both just amazing hunts. But yeah, we came home that year and back from Maine because that was the first week. And then you shot a buck the second week, Dad, didn't you? Or third week. Anyways, yeah, you shot that really nice 9-pointer on a rainy day.
Yep.
Came right in. Could have killed him with a slingshot if you wanted to.
Was that Maine or New Hampshire?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, White Mountains. And yeah, that was just so cool. I was trying to get a young kid a deer, his first deer, and I got texts that were like, "Oh, just got a buck," and I was like, "No way!" And he had kept me updated. He likes to hunt scrapes, and in that area, it's a good area. And you had a doe come right to your scrape, work it right in front of you, and everything. And then you were kind of sneaking your way out, and yeah, you caught him coming right down the hardwoods, right to that scrape line that was
Like
below
12
you.
yards.
Like
11
12 yards, shot him right in the chest, dropped him. That's so awesome. And then I'm getting texts, and I think you were like, yeah, it's a 9-pointer, and then we were all freaking out. And I've probably never driven those roads so fast to get there. And we went in and helped drag him out. That was awesome. Got some amazing pictures. It's just, even if you can make it for just a drag, it's just makes a huge difference. And then me and Shane, the last day of that season, if anyone remembers, we got dumped on. It was like 10 to 12 inches.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And we went into a spot that I had been hunting dry ground in just
What year was this?
2020.
2020.
Yeah, so December 6th would have been the last day. Now it's December 5th, I think.
I remember.
But yeah, I mean, we got...
Unfortunately, my day didn't end like your did.
yeah, well, that day is so funny because we went in, and I'm like, I've been playing, bounce around with these deer, and it's been dry ground. Now we have snow. Well, at the end of the season, and you're not in that good shape anyways, there was an awful lot of cramping and complaining about both of us. Well, because first thing, we go in, we do this loop up high, realize they were probably going to be down low because the wind was so aggressive. Come down to the swamp, jump 3 does and a nice buck, and just found their beds and stuff. Tracked them back up already where we were going, and jumped them. I chased them like I normally do, uphill
Nate said
in a foot of
deer,
snow.
doe, and then took off running. And I thought to myself, we just did a huge loop, and there was times where there were snow drifts that were up past our knees.
Yeah.
And we got back to the very peak of where we had been earlier in that day, and all he said was deer. I think it was a doe. Takes off running, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not chasing after a doe. I'm not doing it. So I was like, he's either going to shoot at it or he's coming back. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I just started walking slowly back up towards you.
No, I think you just stood there.
Yeah.
But anyways, so
I was beat.
the doe just stayed in the back of the group. They had just crossed our tracks, and what the mature doe did was she stayed in the back, and the rest of the group just went on a little bit, and she just turned around, just waited for me. And the second I saw her, she saw me, and she took off, and then obviously the group was ahead of her with the buck, and I ran up over and never saw him. But anyways, so we're coming down. There was one point where Shane, when you get them hammy cramps, well, Shane fell on his face in the snow and he couldn't get up, and of course I'm laughing. Shane's screaming at me. He's like, help me up, because you can't move, you're cramping so bad, but his face is in the snow, and I'm laughing, but I'm cramping. I'm like, come on, be a man, Well, we're both so beat, and it's like 11:30, and we're like, you know what, it's time to just go back to the truck. We're tired. Last day, great season. We're headed out, and Shane goes, let's just take this other green knob finger down. Might as well take a little bit different of a trail than you did the first time. And the way in, Shane said we should go up there, and I said no, because I know better. I'm the big brother, shush. And
2
he
minutes.
thinks he is,
yeah.
2 minutes.
Yeah, and so we go down, and we're just just talking. It's the end of the day. We're just talking, and you figure if you find a track, it's going to be a couple hours old anyways if you get lucky. We're going down, and all of a sudden, we come to these beds, and we're looking. The first bed you can't even tell is really a bed. There's no tracks going into it. Second bed is just barely a dimple. Tracks, you can't even tell there's tracks. Third bed, and then from there, every time he got up, you could tell he got up to feed on the old man's beard on those. He was right around a bunch of laydowns. That deer had slept from the time it started snowing till the time we jumped him. He had never moved except to get up to feed. All his beds were within 15 yards of each other, right next to laydowns, and he had, 6 beds?
Yeah,
Something like
and
that.
like the first bed was just a dimple in the snow.
Yeah,
You could barely even tell it was a deer
bed.
bed. But then there was kind of small dimples
Yeah.
leaving, and then it just got fresher and fresher. And eventually, I think the third or the fourth, maybe fifth bed. I don't know. I think fourth bed. I saw there was an antler mark. in it.
Yeah,
You could see
yeah.
where he had definitely leaned back to
Yeah.
itch himself or something and stuck his antler in the
And
snow.
he had he was
Yeah, it
one
was
of
a
the
long
biggest
body.
framed
Yep.
bodies I've ever shot.
For sure.
And so his bed was long. We knew it was a buck. And then
Last bed
the
was
last
running
bed
tracks.
was running tracks. Bed still warm kind of deal. I mean, we're right on top of him. And we're like, let's do the good old tracker thing, 30 minutes. And well, you start talking to Shane and about 8.5 minutes roll by. I look at him, I go, yeah, we're killing him. I think what happened was we were trying to come up with an excuse, and I'm like, I don't know, you're doing and Shane goes, those woods are really good up there. It'd be a good spot to catch him. And I'm like, okay, we're leaving, kind of thing. So we take off.
If we had gone right away, we would have caught him right in the perfect
Killed him.
spot, which we ended up catching him in a good spot anyway.
Yeah, but anyways, so he ran not even 100 yards and started walking again.
Yeah.
And he was worn out. I mean, when I say worn out, I mean worn out. And he started walking again. And we're going, and we go down through this beaver bog in the corner of it and come up this little, and it's like the old cut, but it's hardwood, if that makes sense. So they're like 4 or 5 inch diameter trees, but they're everywhere. So it's still thick. Your windows, you move to the right and there's a million new windows.
Yeah, and
kinda
everything's
thing.
leaning because it's all got snow on
Yes,
it.
everything's got a foot of snow on it pretty much. Well, anyways, right before that, we're peaking that hill, and I see a pile of poop in his track, and it's steaming, and the snowflakes that were touching it are melting as they hit it.
Well,
And it
plus
doesn't
the
take-
wind was blowing right at us, and we just caught this whiff
Of
of
just rutted buck, and I'm like sitting there, and I'm like, I see the poop, and I'm literally watching the snowflakes. Now I realize how quick the poop can cool down. Like I didn't really comprehend how fresh. I knew it was fresh. I knew we were right behind him. Obviously, we only gave him 10 minutes, but I didn't understand like that doesn't take long in that temperature for the snow to start sticking.
sure.
So I mean the steam's coming off of it. So we hit the flat. I mean, we went like 5 steps, 10 steps, and all of a sudden Shane goes, there he is. And as he says that, I'm like looking. And what we do is when we're in woods like that specifically, he takes 3, 4, 5 steps to my left, and he's got a completely different window. And that's the best thing to do as a double teamer. Yes, it's not bad to have each other stacked, but I can tell you right now that when you guys if people do that, it works good because I mean just stand in the woods and then take 2 steps. You have completely different windows. And so, anyways, so we were doing that, and he goes right there, and I just remember seeing the deer. And then maybe you weren't that far from me, actually, because I remember kind of leaning back. That's right. That time you weren't, but we had been doing that the whole time. But then I remember just plugging my ear thinking, oh, I'm like, kind of see patches of the deer, and I'm thinking, I mean, it wasn't an unsafe shot, but it doesn't matter. Someone right there, I'm just kind of plugging my ear thinking to shoot. And he goes, it's a 10-pointer. 100%, 5 points on one side. And I'm like, that's the best thing to say while I'm sitting here. I'm like, we're freaking out,
Yeah.
We're kids.
Well, because what had happened was he was just facing straight away, and
Yeah.
he had his head to the right, and he had his ears up, and all I needed to see was base of the antlers, like that. Because I'm sure you can shoot a spike horn, and although Nate would have been mad if I shot a spike horn, I didn't really care.
I'm not dragging one out that time.
Yeah,
no.
I'm glad it wasn't a spike horn, but no, I just couldn't see. Like I just couldn't see antler, and he just stood there. Hammers back. I've got it right on his tail. That's a deadly shot straight through. And the wind blew, and I just remember he disappeared because there was so much snow coming off the trees. I just couldn't see him. So when he and then by the time the snow cleared up, he had dropped down over that little bank, and all I saw was 5 points on one side, and all I just remember thinking was I should have pulled the trigger because that's a 10-pointer.
Yeah.
Like I just remember saying that.
Yeah, and then anyway, so we started sneaking, and then all of a sudden I remember thinking, like talking, we're talking, we're like, this all happens fast, but we're like, we need to get over there because if he dropped down to the bank, we can shoot him. He won't know we're coming up over. Well, anyways, we're going, and then we start getting like 30 yards from where it starts, 40 yards from where it starts dropping. I remember Shane going, stop. And I can't remember, but anyways, you
I saw his
scanned with your
eyeball.
scope. Yeah, you I think that might be deer. He pulls up, and inside the pine tree, Shane goes, don't move. I can just see his eyeball. And I don't know how the timing worked, but he didn't see us. And I don't know if it's because everything was, creaking, going left to right, but he didn't see us.
It was a killing day.
It was a killing day. And anyways, and then all of a sudden he goes, I can't see it anymore. He's like, what should we do? And I'm like, I'm going over the bank. You go right, you go left. We're just going to be like 80 yards apart when we hit the bank. And if he went any direction, hopefully we can shoot him. Well, I went left, he went right. And all of a sudden I'm like sneaking,
I should
half
have
crouch.
filmed it.
You should have filmed. You
'Cause
asked me if
yeah.
and I said, no, I just want this deer dead. I mean, we thought he was a giant
Yeah.
and he was a good buck. Anyways, all of a sudden, I don't know how he blended in so good until I saw him, but I come just barely over, and then I kind of go to the left, and all of a sudden I look, and he is right there. I mean, I don't even know, 15 yards, probably 15 yards, quartered away with his head down. He was tired. The reason why we looked at his tracks, he was trying to find a place to bed. He was so worn out from the year that he was trying to find a place to bed, even though we had just jumped him 10 minutes before, or at that time, 20 minutes before. And I mean, he was so worn out, and his head's like hanging low, and he's like you can tell he's like trying to find somewhere to lay down. And I just give him one back of the rib cage because he was quartered away, perfect shot, takes off, give him another one, blew his rear leg off. But he only went like 15 feet. I mean, in that time, I was just the first one I took my time, and then this second one I just let fly because he was still moving. Well, he went down, then we started freaking out, obviously. And there's a video on our old YouTube channel of that deer. And but that's crazy. We nicknamed him Gunky because he had slept all day. He had sleepy seeds all in his eyes. He had like this gunk in his eyes. And I will say, I wonder if he was. I've never seen a deer so worn out. And I mean, I'm talking every rib bone, his entire spine. You can grab on both sides of his neck. You could grab handfuls of skin. And he still weighed 170 on December 6th, so he was still a really good buck. But who knows how much weight he had lost. But I'm telling you right now, I still to this day, I've never seen a buck. And so I thought he was sick. And so I talked to biologists and stuff like that because I wanted to make sure the meat was edible. And on top of that, I wanted to make sure that, there wasn't some disease or something he was carrying. But they just said, well, what happens is sometimes he can, if he's one of those bucks where he's going to run himself so down like that, it's just like a human. Eventually, you can get sick. You know what I mean? Just like a cold or just so worn out, your body immune system is trying to rebuild itself back. And I think that's why he never moved all day in that snow, is because he didn't have the energy to exert. He was literally just feeding, and it was one of those things where you put yourself out there enough. I mean, those sounds like both of those stories were pretty lucky tracking stories, but, the 70 plus 80, 90 miles previous in the season, well, eventually you're going to get those. Some tracks, you're on there for 10 miles and you shoot at them 4 times and don't even get him. And then there's some that you get on the track and you just get so lucky that he decided to bed down in a horrible spot and you shoot him right there. I mean, that deer was, I remember freaking out though. And it's funny because we were cramping real bad until we realized there's antler marks in the bed, and then for some reason all those cramps and
all the pain went away.
All the pain went right away.
Adrenaline.
Oh, there was adrenaline. I mean, just the fact that we found a deer. We had him dead really fast just because we were young. And I think that's what put it in my mind from a young age to be aggressive, because we had no patience at that age, and it was working for us. But then from then to now, I've realized that there's definitely a balance, because I've pushed a lot of deer out of their beds. We just got lucky those 2 times. But yeah, no, that was awesome.
I think everybody has their own tracking style.
Yep.
And one thing that I enjoy about doing these podcasts is I pick up on little things where I can kind of picture how these people tend to go at the track. And some people are more methodical and slow. Some people charge right in, and everybody has their style.
Yep.
And it's what works for you,
Right.
But, you were saying that buck was tired. That is definitely a thing, I've tracked a lot of bucks. And when you find that one, that's kind of, because in early November, when those bucks are running does, you literally aren't going to catch them.
Yeah.
Not unless you get lucky.
Right.
They are, I mean, they're doing more mileage and chasing, and they're just gone. They're not in the same zip code as you are, and you could run all day. You're not going to catch them. But later in the season, when they get tired like that, the buck that I killed, the Big 8, he had bedded 3 times and was in his 4th bed when I killed him.
Yeah.
And, he could have laid there all day. I've seen that several times where I've been tracking a buck and jump a deer out of their bed. I'm like, where'd that deer come from? I do a loop, and it's been snowing for 8 hours, and there's not a track. And that deer had been laying there before the snow started, during and after, and, they're just tired. They run real hard, so it's going to happen,
Yeah, you just got to put yourself out there enough times to you can call it luck or whatever you want, but your odds, you play the odds. Well, if you just go out every time, eventually you're going to get on one of those tracks where it just clicks, everything clicks. Sometimes you work hard to make things click, and it never does, and then sometimes it seems so effortless, but, that's kind of how tracking is sometimes.
Well, that's what luck is, too, right? It's an acronym, laboring under correct knowledge.
Right.
You do that enough times.
Yep.
And you're going to bump into them.
Yeah, but, you do learn at the end of the day, it's not all luck, though, because your drive to stay out there isn't luck, in my opinion. That's self-discipline and drive. Mm-hmm. But everything else, you learn little things, though, like, the amount of stuff I wish I knew when we first started tracking, like in Maine, I don't know how many 200-pound bucks tracks I've been on.
Yep.
I don't know how many, and I don't have any. I still haven't even killed a 200-pounder in Maine. I've got it done in New Hampshire, but
which is a feat in the White Mountains.
Yeah, I know. I've gotten pretty.
I've got a
lucky
lot
with
of
it.
really good friends that are deer killers, and they kill mature bucks every year, and they're just not 200 pounds all the time in the White Mountains. It's just a different. You said something when you were talking about describing the deer. It's really long.
Yeah,
that's what it takes in the whites, because most of your mature bucks in the whites, they're 5.5, 6.5. They're 180. Maybe they're 190 during the rut, but by the time we get to kill them,
yeah, I know. Everyone's always like, man, I've killed 2 200-pounders in the White Mountains, and they're like, oh, 2 200-pound bucks. I'm like, that's not anything that I'm doing specific. Is the weight is luck, because not for anything, but I've seen some 160-inch deer get taken out of our area that weighed 160 pounds, and that was during the prime season. Mm-hmm. So that's not a 200-pound deer any time of the year. It's just that's how he is. And I've just gotten lucky with weights. And like that second 200-pounder I shot, that's the only thing he had was length. But that's where you get a lot of your weight from. And but yeah, it's just the length, and a lot of it does have to do with that. And but obviously a big chest, big neck helps. But like age class, we've shot some bucks in the White Mountains, and they're 5, 6 years old, but they don't have. I've seen them. They don't have huge bodies. Like 180-pound deer in the White Mountains. That's a
dandy.
That is a dandy. You go to Maine, you're in a different class. 180 still. I'll shoot a 180-pound deer every day. I don't really care, but they're different. They're different subspecies in my opinion. They're completely different,
especially in that northern Maine. Like I think Western Mountains, you're kind of getting there, but once you get up into that Jackman North, that's a different deer.
Yeah, that's when you got to start making sure that what you're tracking is a buck and not just a big BMW, big Maine woman.
Yeah.
Didn't Charlie Foote have a line like that?
Oh, he said something about Vermont women.
That's right.
Yeah, he said something about Vermont women. I guess. Yeah, man, Charlie Foote. I love Charlie Foote.
You guys have rubbed elbows with him.
Oh yeah. Well, we don't live, but.
I actually ran into him.
Yeah, Shane ran into him in the woods and didn't know about him. And Shane comes home, man, this cool guy with this old 14-foot-long sidelock muzzleloader, 2-inch thick glasses, comes talking to me. I think his name was like John Foote or something. I'm like, Charlie Foote. I'm like, you ran into Charlie Foote.
You ran into a legend.
You ran into a legend. Well,
he actually called me in. It's a funny story. He called me in during muzzleloader season.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Shane was all worked up.
I thought
awesome.
I was.
Well, you must not be too, because he didn't shoot you.
Yeah. I was running from tree to tree. I thought for sure there was a buck chasing a doe. No, it was Charlie Foote hiding behind a rock. But I didn't.
I love it too, because he's
he's one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet.
Oh yeah.
And
I was in a spot that he's been hunting for years.
Yeah.
And he told me everything about it before. Like, I didn't even have to ask him. He just wanted to talk deer hunting while we're walking out of the woods.
Yeah.
And
Give me your phone. Give me your
Yeah.
maps. He does that.
Yeah, give me your maps.
Give me your maps. And then he just drops pin. It was pretty hot here last week. And then you just go up there and like, dang, this guy, he knows what he's doing.
That's a true somebody that is confident in their craft.
Yep.
That they don't. There is no secrets because they know they can go somewhere else and kill a big buck.
Exactly.
And to me, that is when you talk to somebody like that, you're like, yeah, I'm talking to the dude.
Yeah.
This guy's got it figured out. He doesn't care about.
Nope.
He's not keeping secrets and parking his truck in different places, playing that game. He didn't have to. You can come hunt right next to me. I'm going to shoot the biggest buck in the woods every year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And he's happy if you get a big one.
100%. That's the other part is he doesn't care.
He doesn't care. He's really happy, and but no, that was really cool. And then the next day we went in the same spot, and we figured we'd run into him because I think he had said something to you, Shane, and I wanted to meet him, and we met him, and then from then on, I've gone over his house like 2 or 3 times just to sit in the backyard, talk deer hunting, and he scored that buck for me. I didn't even care about the score, but I just wanted to say Charlie Foote, my legend, was able to, see one of my deer, and he's just happy to talk about stories and stuff. But yeah, no, man, people like him they're good for the sport and the hunting community for sure.
You guys are too. Young guys like
that.
you. This has been refreshing. Something I didn't hear much at all, if I did at all, was anything about a camera. Now, I don't think that if you choose to hunt with a camera, it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's refreshing to hear you guys enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
Which I think is so important. I think that with social media, it's very easy to fall victim into the destination.
Yeah.
And everything you guys, the stories, the excitement, you tricking your dad, like those are all things that are about the journey in the moment. And those memories are what you're going to, cherish forever. It's not.
Yep.
Yes, when there's a big buck laying on the ground at the end of that journey, it's that much more, rewarding.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm sure that you guys have had plenty of stories of bucks that aren't the biggest buck in the woods that you had just as amazing of a time with. So
Yep.
Well, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
it's definitely been.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, the way we were raised and Dad bringing us out is a big, huge impact on how we hunt now. So, for sure.
It's not really fun unless there's family involved.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Can you imagine shooting a deer and at the end of the day, just bringing it home, putting it on a game pole, no one ever coming over to say hi, talk to you about the deer. You never told anybody the deer story, and you just brought it to the meat cutter. I mean, a big part of it's not the deer. It's really just the story behind it and the family and stuff like that. I mean, I remember shooting that first 4-pointer that I tracked. I remember being like, the only thing I regret about this is not having my brother and my dad with me. That was the only thing I regretted about it because it felt weird. Like, I walked up to the deer, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got it done. And then there's not my brother hooting with me or hollering or my dad. There's none of that. And I was like, this is weird. Even though I love tracking solo, and I think the only reason why I do is because I can just go and there's no distraction of like talking. You're just straight zoned in. But other than that, I would always love for someone to be at camp. It would be so boring.
It's not the same. Like I've shot bucks around here. I've shot 2 bucks locally. And I almost don't want to do it. Like
Right.
I do it because of time and, maybe I can't go up north that weekend and I just want to take my gun for a walk. One of them was actually right across the street here. And I almost like a 120-inch deer, and I almost didn't shoot it because I'm like, I don't know, it's muzzle loader, it's early.
Right.
This giant buck's laying in his bed grooming himself. All I can see is tines, and I'm like, finally I shot him. But yeah, it's that camaraderie that comes with it, those stories. That's
sure.
For me, that's such a huge part of hunting. And I feel bad for the guys that, they don't have that. And sometimes it's because they don't want it. And
Right.
I guess, maybe I need to be more empathetic, but I know for me, shooting a deer at camp is so much more rewarding than shooting one here.
It is.
Even
Sure.
there's nothing to do with the size. It's all about the experience.
Yeah, it is.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you guys coming down.
Yeah.
You're close. Well, you're not because you're in Colorado now.
Yeah.
But You guys come down. We'll do this again for sure. When you coming home? You coming home for hunting season?
Yeah, I'll probably come home for August.
If his
maybe hunt
girlfriend
stock.
lets him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had to throw that one in there. And then we'll see. I'll probably come back. Knowing me, I'll order tickets when I know there's snow coming, like last year. So
Yeah.
Yep, that's probably what I'll do.
Cool.
Yeah.
You come out, shoot a big buck.
Yeah, hopefully one or two. Hopefully, I'd like to shoot. I want to shoot a 200-pounder in Maine. It's my
Yeah.
goal.
Well, I'm excited to see your guys' content. These guys are going to be filming for Northwoods Whitetails this
Yep.
year. And I think it's going to be pretty good stuff.
I hope
Maybe
so.
a little puking.
Maybe a little puking.
Yeah, we'll blur that out. But I'll gladly set up the tripod to film it. So.
Yeah, Brooke, don't blur that out.
Yeah.
Steve, thank you for coming down.
Absolutely.
It was great chatting with you. All right, that's a wrap. Thanks for listening, guys. Catch you on the next one.